Okay, that's the question I should be asking myself, right? And more importantly, it's the question I should be asking right now. Let's say you're doing an interview about this whole online educational platform. Someone might have recently shared a video reflecting on past mistakes. A chronicle of missteps and heroic tales. I thought that was a brilliant title. It combines the idea of learning from failures with the concept of heroic exploits, creating a paradoxical image. Failing, yet recounting it like a heroic deed. I think that title conveys that meaning. Seeing that title, I thought it was wonderful, and it brought to mind tales of bravery and those failure teacher lessons. So, looking at things now, what's the big difference between tales of bravery and those failure teacher lessons? How does someone perceive them as things to be shared with the world? From your current perspective, what kind of story was a tale of bravery? Something like that feels relevant now, right? Because first of all, it's not my experience, a tale of bravery, you see. You can't ask someone who hasn't done anything exciting about a heroic tale. It's pointless. You can't ask just anyone. But the reason I'm being asked about it now is because someone released a video with "Tale of Bravery" in the title. If it weren't for that, it would be a strange question. Hey, I saw that you and your partner got into a fist fight on the radio, according to a past video. What was that like? Why are you asking me that now, out of the blue? Sure, I got into a fist fight with my partner on live radio. But why are you bringing that up now? That's the key. Figuring out what to ask someone and when to ask it is about finding the right balance. It's about hitting the sweet spot. If you carefully consider these 3 checkpoints, you're guaranteed to ask a good question. No doubt about it. When you're coming up with questions, really think them through. Brainstorm a bunch of possibilities, then run them through these 3 filters. The questions that survive are the good ones. It's a sure thing. They're specific, essential, and relevant to both you and the other person. Plus, they tie into the other person's past experiences and are appropriate for the present moment. If you ask a question like that, you'll get a standing ovation. They'll think, "Wow, what a great question to ask. Thank you," because they're incredibly rare. Over 95% of the questions are like, "What is love?" or "Do you like peanuts?" Why are you asking me that? Why me? Why now? It's always the same old generic stuff. 95% of the time. On the other hand, if you look at questions other people ask through the lens of these 3 filters, you'll find it incredibly interesting. Okay, so you understand that. Now, let's move on to some concrete techniques you can use. The most important prerequisite is empathy. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Thinking about them. Are you really considering the other person? Are you taking into account their past experiences? Does it fit with their current situation? That's what empathy is all about. So, what should you empathize with? There are 3 key points. First, what they like. Talking about something the other person loves is a guaranteed way to get them excited. That's why Ame Talk is so popular. When they say, "We're such and such enthusiasts," they're talking about what they love. So you have Evangelion enthusiasts or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure enthusiasts, and they're all talking about what they love. Wow, you really like that. Do you know about this? Hey, listen to this. It's like this. Evangelion is about awakening and becoming like this. It's not just a robot. They get so excited. You think, wow, they're really into this. That's the reason for Ame Talk's big breakthrough. The show created a setup where the power of questions explodes. There are shows that don't have that questioning skill. Honestly, there are shows that ask nothing but unpleasant questions. Thank you for appearing on our show. So, in our discussion today, the thing we want to ask you about most is, what do you dislike about your wife? What do you dislike about your wife? Dislike? Well, you know, stories about family strife always get a lot of buzz, right? So, what you dislike, and also, tell us about a senior colleague you dislike. A senior colleague I dislike? And also, your complaints about the agency. I don't want to talk about any of that. Why do I have to talk about my complaints about the agency, a senior colleague I dislike, and my wife's shortcomings? But there are shows like that, many of them. When that happens, you have to talk because you have to be on the show, but it feels forced. That's why those shows aren't exciting. They say, well, the talk wasn't very lively. Hey, I did my best, but I can't get into it if I'm being forced to talk about things. But what made Ame Talk groundbreaking was that they said, just talk about what you love. Talk as much as you want, and we'll make it funny in the editing room. It was wonderful. Shows that are interesting and become hits tap into that. When the questioner and speaker find common ground in what they like, they think, oh, you like that too? I like that too. Tell me about it. Talking about insects, for example. Specifically, it includes a conversation between Osamu Tezuka and other manga artists, looking for moments where the other manga artists really drew out Tezuka's stories. The reason is that they were able to get him talking about insects, and then about manga. Because what Tezuka really loved was insects, and talking about them led him to talk about manga as well. It's interesting, right? And another thing, what they like. You may have heard that before, but it's not just about that feeling. It's also about their struggles. It must have been tough, right? What was difficult for you? But that's too broad and abstract. When you did such and such at that time, wasn't it hard? When you ask that, they're more likely to say, of course it was. In the example given, there's an interview with Tetsuko Kuroyanagi. It's interesting. She's interviewing Nagaharu Yodogawa, a film critic. Yodogawa had seen a huge number of movies. He'd seen 800 films. Seeing 800 films is a big deal. Among those 800 films, there must have been times when he wasn't in the mood, or when the movie wasn't interesting. That must have been tough, right? Yodogawa said, well, there are definitely times like that. But what do you do then? If I thought, well, this is work, so I have to watch it, I couldn't do this job. What I do is, I find one or two good things about it. Something I like. There's something to like in every movie. For example, in that movie, the toilet bowl in that scene was really clean. Even something like that is enough. The toilet bowl was clean. It gets exciting. You can't usually ask that, but you'd like to know. You've seen so many movies, it's amazing. But there must have been some you didn't like. That must have been tough. Because she tossed it to him so skillfully, he was able to say, yeah, it was tough. But even in those cases, I try to find something I really like about the movie. He really taught her something. If she had just said, you've seen 800 movies, that's amazing, and he had said, thank you, and that was the end of it, it would have been a waste. You wouldn't have heard that story. So, one approach is to focus on the hardships. By empathizing and relating to their struggles, they'll be more willing to open up. So, if someone says, "That perfect human thing was amazing," and you just say thank you, it doesn't go anywhere. Instead, if you say, "It was a huge hit, but it must have been tough to make." It's not easy for comedians to write songs and have them become hits. Plus, you're not professional musicians, right? How did you make that song? Was it hard to write the lyrics? They'll want to talk about it. First, you acknowledge their struggles. Because everyone, no matter how great or successful they are, has gone through hardships. By empathizing with that, they'll finally open up. And at that time, you must always draw out their expertise. You're calling on a professional. You're calling on a successful person who is busy and doesn't have much time. They're taking the time to answer your questions. So, if you ask them a question that anyone could answer, it's a waste. If you're talking to an artist, ask them about music. If they're an artist, ask them about art. If they're an athlete, ask them about sports. It's important to be able to draw out their expertise. So, if I'm invited on a show, for example, it should be about things like online video, conversation, or reading. It's about drawing out that professional knowledge. Someone was really good at that. The Mentalist was great. He interviewed me, and that video is still online. He said, "This is what I want to ask you. Why are you able to read so many media?" I was surprised. "You're curious about that?" "Yes, I am. I always read research papers. A research paper is usually about this many pages long. But you're reading thick, like Sapiens and Factfulness. Uploading that every day takes more time and energy than me reading research papers and talking about them. Are you a speed reader? Or do you have some kind of trick?" He asked me that right away. The thing he wanted to know was clear. On top of that, he was drawing out my expertise and showing empathy. Reading that many must be tough. He was even being humble. I mean, he's amazing, reading all those papers and talking about psychology like that. It's amazing. Even so, he was saying that I was more amazing. He wanted me to tell him my secret. I felt good talking about it. I was being manipulated by the Mentalist. That's what it's all about. Just that first question in that conversation showed the power of questions. He empathized with my struggles. On top of that, he drew out my expertise. It was wonderful.